Hey guys, welcome to Warhammer Stuff. So today we have Drukari Real Space Raid versus the Black Templars. So let's go ahead and check out the armies.
So for today, I'm bringing exactly 2,000 points of Black Templars. And in order to do it, my HQ is, the model is a chaplain, but it's a captain in Terminator armor. He is equipped with a relic blade. He also has the warlord trait Imperium sword, and he has Tannhauser's bones as his relic, making him incredibly tough. And then I have the Emperor's champion, in which I have given him the warlord trait, Master of Arms. And so a bit redundant, but it's basically the extra attack and the fight first against all enemies. And I have Chaplain Grimaldus, who is just here. I don't have any special abilities that I gave him. He has no trait, warlord trait. And I have the Apothecary, which does have, they're essentially the Chief Apothecary. Yes. And he has Selfless Healer as his warlord trait. And then I have this Assault Centurion Sergeant. He's not a character, but the Black Templars have the ability to make a Sergeant basically receive a huge buff. And so he has the Champion of the Feast. So he has +1 to wound, he has +1 attack, and he hits, his weapon skills increased by 1. And I gave him the mini relic item. Black Templars, the Sergeants of Squads, can have these smaller relics called the Crux Obsidian. So he has -1 to damage just for him. So he is very buff. But he's not actually a character. He is just a Sergeant. But Black Templars can make him up. Now down to troops. First, I have a squad of 5 infiltrators. Our purpose is to sit back, hold objectives, and keep enemy deep strikes at a distance. Second, I have a squad of 7 Primaris intercessors. And for just fighting. Then I have 2 squads of Crusade. 2 Crusade squads with just bolt guns. The Sword Brother models just have swords, but they all have bolt guns. Then I have a giant squad, a Crusade squad, by the way. Everyone has chain swords. The Neophytes do not have chain swords. They actually have combat knives. So this is all pure melee. And the Sword Brother, who is leading them, he has 2 lightning claws. I could not find the model for it, but it doesn't matter. It's the stats that matters, and according to the stats, he has the lightning claws. So, then moving on, of course, the Assault Centurions. Each and every one of them have the exact same loadout. The Sergeant just has the extra stuff, but they all have Hurricane Bolters, 2 Hurricane Bolters, and 2 Melt-A-Guns. So, very anti-armor, anti-mass horde. Then I have a Redemptor Dreadnought. This is the model I found for it. Plenty of good weapons and guns, and he will be a good support. And then, of course, I have the main reason I wanted to take this army, the Land Raider Crusader, because the Black Templars are the only ones that have anything going for the Land Raiders. So, 1 sweet Land Raider Crusader, fully decked out, Hunter Killer Missile, Multi-Melta, Storm Bolter. And that is exactly 2,000 points.
Alright guys, so for 2,000 points of Drukari, I have a real space raid, and I was actually able to take a brigade detachment. I think this is like the first time I've ever done it. Let's take a look at what's going on. So I have obviously the 3 separate sections. I have the Homunculus Coven, I have the Archon Cabal, and then the Witch Cult. So starting with the Homunculus Coven, I obviously have the character. Now I gave him a warlord trait, which is Twisted Animator. And so basically he can bring up in my command phase D3 racks back if they have died. And then I also upgraded him to Alchemical Maestro, and he has his regular stuff. But yeah, no other relics or anything like that. Behind him I have 2 full squads of racks for my troops here. They just have base weapons, nothing fancy. Into the elites, I have my single squad of Grotesques with just monstrous cleavers. And then in the heavy supports, I have a Talos and a Kronos. So the Talos, I kitted out to do with more massed infantry, so it has a splinter cannon, twin liquefier gun, and chain flails. And I think technically one of the macro cutter things. But yeah, and then I have the Chronos, which has Spirit Siphon, Spirit Leech Tentacles, and I actually paid the 5 points for its Spirit Probe. So it's essentially like a weird medic-y kind of thing that can still beat stuff up. And that's my Homunculus Coven. Oh, it is also the Coven of the Dark Creed. So basically they subtract 1 from leadership characteristic of models within 6 inches and 1 from combat attrition tests. I don't know if that'll affect Space Marines, but we'll see when we get there. And then if they fight something with a lower or equal or lower leadership, they actually get +1 to hit. So the Archon Cabal, I actually chose the Cabal of the Black Heart, so like the main one, because I have Blades for Hire, and it allows them to basically come into the fold. It also allows Cabal units to reroll 1 hit roll, either in shooting or in melee. So anyway, so my Archon, who's also my Warlord, I upped him to be a Splinter Genius, and I gave him the Warlord trait Consummate Weapon Master. Now, I didn't realize that actually excluded relics because he has the Djinn Blade, so I'm actually swapping it out. It'll say Consummate Weapon Master on his thing, but that I'm actually swapping it out for the Writ of the Living Muse, which is the Cabal of the Black Hearts relic, which allows me to reroll wound rolls of 1 within 6 inches for 1 squad. And then, so with the Cabal, it's pretty simple. I have 3 squads of 10, just Cabalite warriors, nothing fancy, just their regular splinter rifles. I have a Ravager. Now this time I actually swapped it out for the Disintegrator cannons, which are just kind of like really strong heavy bolters, I guess. I don't know. And then I have 1 Raider in the back. In there, I mean, technically the Raiders are in his detachment no matter what, but anyway. And then moving on to the Witch Cult, I actually chose the Witch Cult of Red Grief, and so it's led by this Succubus. I gave her the relic, the Triptych Whip, and I gave her the Quicksilver Fighter Warlord trait, so she has +2 attacks from that, and the whip adds 3 attacks to her, so she on the get-go has 5 attacks extra every combat phase, and so that'll be pretty cool. Behind her is 1 squad of witches, just a plain old squad of witches, no special weapons, nothing like that. I tried them last time and I didn't super care for them. I know some of them have stratagems, but and then 2 squads of 5 Hellions with, again, just base weapons, and then a squad of 3 Reavers, also just base weapons, so nothing fancy, just really fast things, and then obviously the Raider in the back, and then sitting outside of these 3 detachments are my Blades for Hire. So I have a squad of Scourges with 4 Shredders, so that's the really strong flamers essentially. And then I have a squad of 10 Incubi. Now, I didn't get a chance to use them last time, but I'm kind of excited to see how they work out this time. They are very mean in melee, but they are also very fragile, so we'll see what happens. And then I have a squad of 5 Mandrakes, because, why not? And then that is 2,000 points of Dark Eldar.
Alright, so for the mission today, we have Death and Zeal, which is Control 1, Control 2, Control More. If you have an OBSEC unit that touches the objective, you control it even if you don't have guys on it, but you will lose it if the enemy takes it from you, even without OBSEC units. And the secondary mission is you get 2 points if you either kill an enemy that's within 6 inches of an objective, or you take an objective from the enemy. But if you do both of these, you will get 3 points. And that is the mission. Alright, so for today, by the power of video game, we have this pre-made battlefield deployment. This will be actually pretty interesting to maneuver through. It heavily favors infantry and not vehicles. So we'll see how things go. Alright, so for secondaries, for Black Templars, starting off with Space Marine Shock Tactics. Control the victory points if I control 1 or more objective markers that are controlled by my opponent, which is the same as the Death and Zeal objective. So just bundling up with less different things to do. Grind them down. Regular objective, score 3 victory points if I have more enemy units destroyed than them. He has a lot of units. I mean, this seems feasible. And of course, the third objective, which I can never seem to find a good one, Bathe Your Blade. Basically, I select one of my guys, I select one of his guys, and if his guy dies, I get 5 points. If he dies in melee, I get 10. If my guy kills him in melee, I get 15. I actually got the full 15 last time I did this, but that was very hard to do in a miracle. So we'll see what happens in this game.
Yeah, so I took Fear and Terror this time. So Drukari book. So I basically get a victory point for any time you fail a morale test, fall back, or you fail an action. And then also if I kill an army in melee, or a unit in melee, I roll 2d6. If I either equal and exceed or just exceed, I can't find it just yet, I gain a victory point from that as well. Then I got Engage on all fronts because I'm Drukari, so chances are by turn 1, if not 2, I'll be on all fronts. And then Nephilim data. I have a lot of troops. I figured this might be a good one to do. So we'll see. I was originally going to try Assassination, but I was like, you know what? Ain't nobody got time for that this time.
Alright, so for deployment, the Black Templars, the main thing was to place the large units first so that they would get would be able to take up the most space, and then the smaller units would be placed tactically to counter or go for objectives. However, this map is very unforgiving for the objectives. It's really out in the open, so there's a lot of casualties that can easily be taken with the center objectives, so this is going to be a challenging one. And apart from that, the vehicles took strategic places where they can give fire support and movement support, and then the infiltrators are put in a position where they can really block out any rear line deep strike, and that's essentially what's happening, and hopefully hiding behind any cover for protection from any long range sniping. And that's overall my idea.
Yeah, so I have a pretty mobile army, so I wasn't super worried about putting a lot of stuff farther back. Now, I did take Mandrakes, and they're actually able to just kind of deploy wherever they want, farther than 9 inches. So I gave that a go. They're in the smoldering oil slick thing, so if they get shot at, it'll make them a little harder to take off. And then I put all of essentially my entire homunculus coven on one side of the map, because last time I found they have a lot of synergies. Well, I say a few synergies that really just work well together, like to themselves. So I figured I'd try just a blob of them on one side. But the rest of my units I was actually able to space out a little bit because a lot of them are super mobile and play a little bit more responsive. And then I have a lot of troops to work on objectives and engage in all fronts, and so we'll see how it goes.
Alright, so now we discuss who should go first. I'll let you go first on this one.
Well, I think whoever goes second is going to have probably a bunch of charges. I know this map is the same size as the rest of them, but it feels smaller. And it might be the setup layout, the deployment zones. So I probably want to go second. My troops are a little more fragile, so they don't really take well to being charged. So yeah, I mean, if I go first, I can do a bunch of map movement, and that'll probably be nice. Start my data, Nephilim data, and I'll easily get engaged in all fronts, at least the 2 points. So yeah, I mean, I'll be able to do stuff in the first turn if I go first, but I'd very much rather go second.
Yeah, so as far as I can say, before that, I'll say that I could not see the height at which I placed my intercessors because of camera angle, or not, my infiltrators. So they were on a 3rd floor, so I switched them to a 2nd floor because I didn't see that. So just FYI for those watching. But as far as going first or second, it's pretty much, what you said. Whoever goes second is going to have a very target-rich environment and a lot of charges. This place is very claustrophobic, very tight corners and stuff. So basically what I think is if I go first, I have very little opportunity, just more opportunity to get shot. I would, if I played it super aggressive, I could get the middle, a few other points, but that's not entirely the major point. I mean, we have control 1, control 2, control more. For right now, the major issue is rapidly, if I go second, I'll probably have a lot of more success getting a lot of good charges off, kill a bunch of your units. Yeah, going first is really a disadvantage. If I went first, I'd have to play very safe, hug terrain and stuff, and just be super cautious with what I do, and just hope everything works out pretty well. Apart from that, there really isn't much else I can do. So if I go second, basically charge all the objectives. If I go first, I have to very carefully eke out and prepare to be charged. That's pretty much it. Yeah. All right, let's see what happens.
Yeah, let's see what happens. I got a 5.
You are first, and I am second.
Ah, that's unfortunate.
All right, we have it. Drukari, turn 1.
Alright, for pre-battle, I don't have any actual pre-battle movements, and neither does my opponent, but I select, for my Bathe the Blade thing, my Emperor's Champion to murder his homunculus. So his homunculus has to kind of be in the front to give buffs to all the troops, so he will definitely be in harm's way. And he's a very likely target to kill, so as long as he dies in melee, that's 10 points. If the Emperor's Champion does it, that's 15. If he just dies in general, that's 5. So hopefully, we'll see how this goes, but I think it's the most likely kill, and the most likely person to do it is the Emperor's Champion.
Alright, you guys, so as you can see from what is unfolding before your eyes, everything moved, and almost everything ran, because there's no targets for me to shoot at, and I don't want to get super close, but I still need to kind of move into other zones. So they all kind of ran, they're all hugging the edges a little bit. He'll probably still be able to get a charge or 2 off, but, you know, it is what it is. And yeah, so I was still trying to play cat and mouse a little bit here because Dark Eldar are super fragile, so they won't survive charges. So I have to charge, but what that means is I have to get just close enough that he can't charge me, but yet that in my next turn I could do something, hopefully. Yeah, and then my Kabalai warriors in the back are doing Nachman data, so yeah, just a whole bunch of movements, a whole bunch of runs, just trying to expand it in different zones, cover some of my characters, and not get charged and beat to death. So for secondaries for this turn, I got 2 points for Death and Zeal because I was able to take an objective with the Grotesques. So the Mandrake one I started the game owning because they were able to, during deployment, set up there. I believe that's what the ruling would be. But so my Grotesques took the one on the top for you guys. And so I got that 2 points there. Nothing for Fear and Terror because I didn't kill anything. Nothing really happened on that front. I got 2 points for Engage on all fronts because I'm quite spread. And then I was successful in my Nephilim data for the first one. So, yes.
Alright, for the Black Templar movement phase, it's trying to counter the enemy. So I have very few guys countering his half of his army. I have a huge portion of my army countering his other half, so I don't know if this is going to be an even balance and stuff. So, for the command phase, Chaplain Grimaldus gave the red squad, Giant Red Crusade squad 5 but feel no pains and reroll hits with his litanies. After that, then they all ran, and because Chaplain Grimaldus is within 6 inches of them, their runs count as D3 plus 3 instead of a regular D6. So they all moved up this way. The Green Sword Brother unit ran towards the center objective. The Emperor's Champion moved up north to do his purpose, to hunt down the homunculus, and the rest, Chaplain Margolis, moved up as well. The Land Raider Crusader eventually moved up. I'll get to that in a bit. And the bottom, the Assault Intercessors ran to get close, but there's no way I could really feasibly do anything without being heavily punished for it next turn. The Initiates walked on the bottom. Blue Crusade Squad walked up, and then Redemptor Dreadnought peeked to the corner for his guns and weapons, and the Infiltrators spread out to create that no deep strike bubble. Then I had the Land Raider Crusader move up and spent 1 CP to use the stratagem for them to disgorge his entire content. So my Assault Centurions got out, my Captain Terminator and my Apothecary got out. Now, here's the thing though. Because this game is in video game format, it's a little harder to physically gauge a lot of things. So like some models here are like stepping on each other's toes for size. We just allow small things like that because in reality we'd be able to fit some of them in real life. So it's like there are limits to this video game version. So if you see me like stacking a bunch of guys where they shouldn't exactly perfectly fit, it's kind of just has to do with the video game stuff of how refined and how fine we can place things. So like if we're talking about fitting a tiny giant Land Raider Crusader through a tiny gap, then yeah, that's obviously not going to happen. But like small little things, it's fine. It's not worth fighting over. Alright, 'twas a lot of shooting. So I started at the bottom with my Blue Squad Initiates and fired at the Heliarchs there. And they managed to kill one with their shooting. They did a total of 2 wounds. And yes. And then after that, my Redemptor Dreadnought mag dumped the what are those? Mandrakes on the objective and successfully wiped them out. I thought they'd be tougher. They had -1 to hit, but under like 300 dice they managed to die. And then up top, so with my disgorged Assault Centurions, they all fired. So the front 2 Centurions fired their Hurricane Bolters at the racks that were next to the Grotesques because they were within rapid fire range for that. And I successfully killed like 3 of them. Because those racks, while toughness 4, because the Homunculus is next to them, is now toughness 5. So they actually became very resistant to all my shooting. And then the Assault Centurions fired the rest of their Hurricane Bolters into the Grotesques that were there, and they did 3 wounds because of their high toughness. Then the Multi-Meltas all fired, and they just obliterated the entire squad. 8 Multi-Meltas. Then my captain fired at the Reavers that were up top, and I made the mistake. He has a combi Bolter and Melta, so I fired both. I should have fired the Melta first because I did 1 wound with the Bolter first and then finished him off with the Melt again. If I did it the other way, I would have finished off 1 and did a wound. Then I went to my Apothecary, who fired at the Reavers and did nothing. Then the Land Raider Crusader opened fire. With his heavy Melta, he fired at the Reavers, and he missed 1 shot, and then my opponent saved it with a 6-up invulnerable save on the second. Then the rest of the fire of the Land Raider Crusader hit the giant unit of racks at the very top, and successfully killed only 4 of them because they're toughness 5 now. Only the assault cannon managed to kill anything. Yeah, it's just like barely any wounds went through. And that was my shooting phase. Alright, so there were no charges because I didn't want my character to be far out. He's already in a dangerous enough of position, so I didn't think it was worth trying to kill 2 Reavers and having him all alone in front of all those enemies. And so, with Death and Zeal, I did kill an enemy unit that was next to an objective, so I did that. And I also took an objective that I didn't, that belonged to my enemies, or I didn't have at first. So I got the full 3 points for Death and Zeal. Shock Tactics. I control 1 objective that was controlled by my opponent. He had those Vraks, no, that's right, those Grotesques on the objective. I killed them, and I'm now on it with my pinky toe, but yeah. Grind them down. I killed 2 of his units. He didn't kill anything of mine. And I've got nothing on Bathe Your Blade, but so far it's looking pretty good.
Alright, you guys. So for the movement phase, a lot happened. So my Scourges and Hellions kind of honed in on his Assault Intercessors and Initiates down at the bottom, so they all kind of swarmed them there. And then my Cablite Warriors moved fully onto the objective, and they are going to do Nachman data. My Kronos, Talos, Homunculus, Rax, they all kind of moved forward. The Rax actually ran, and the Kronos and the Talos did not because they can fly and they had 8-inch movement. And then my Cablite Warriors that were near them also ran forward to try and do Nachman next turn. And then my Cablite Warriors on my back objective, because of the mission, if you take something as objective secured, you control it even if you don't have units on it, as long as the opponent doesn't come along and control it. So they booked it forward. I think I rolled like a 1 on the run though, so that was unfortunate. The Ravager dipped down and around to shoot at some stuff. And then my Raider actually moved forward onto the middle objective. He's sitting on that oil slick, so hopefully that'll help him just a hair. And then my Raider came in with my Succubus and my Witches. And I spent the 1 command point for the stratagem, which is known as Murderous Descent. So they popped out. And they can, do whatever they do. But but so we'll see how that goes. And yeah, I think that was my movement phase. All right, you guys. So for shooting, a little bit happened, not actually a lot. So my Hellions, both squads, shot at the blue squad of initiates all the way at the bottom, killing 1. Yeah. And then my Scourges shot at his assault intercessors, killing 3. So that was actually nice. And then I moved to my Raider in the middle, shooting at his Redemptor. He hit, but he failed the wound roll, and I didn't spend a point for it because I didn't think it was super worth it at the moment. Then I immediately shot with my other Raider in his Darklands, and he hit and he wounded, doing 5 damage, but Dreadnoughts have that -1 damage, so it ended up only equaling out to 4. Then I shot with my Ravager and his Disintegrator Cannons at his Assault Centurions, and I don't think I actually did anything. Yeah. So, total whiff, he probably saved something as well. And then my Talos shot, I think he killed 1 or 2 guys, neophytes. And then my Chrono shot, also killing 1 or 2 or 3 or something like that. And then that was actually my whole shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so for charges, here's what happened. The Heliarch, the squad of 5, charged his Assault Intercessors. And then the squad of 4 charged his Initiates. I tried to keep them separate just because, I guess, actually, there's not a huge reason. Then, going down, my Kronos charged his red squad, as did my Talos. They both got in. The big squad of Rax charged the Initiates, or the red squad. They also got in. My Witches and my Succubus got into nothing. It probably wasn't the best spot for them. But I didn't really know where else to put them, so that's kind of just how that ended up. And then, so my small squad of Rax actually charged his captain. So yeah, that was the charge phase. Alright, you guys, so for fight phase, I started with the Cronus, I believe, and honestly, I don't remember what he did. I don't think he actually did anything.
He didn't. I saved them all.
And then, yeah, I don't think he did anything. But so then we got into a little bit of a debate as to priority. If he were to pay the points to interrupt, if his red squad could go at the same pacing as his Emperor's Champion, who has always strike first. So we kind of figured that they're both on the same tier. So if he paid the points, they could go instead of his Emperor's Champion. And then his Emperor's Champion would go next in the swing set. But he didn't pay the points because it honestly really wasn't worth it. So he swung with his Emperor's Champion. He killed 1 rack, I believe.
Yeah. Yes.
That sounds wrong.
No, it is wrong. Well, it's factual, but it's wrong.
It's correct, but it's terrible. Okay, that's what I thought. Anyway, so that happened. That whole moment of shame. Then I went up to my Hellions. My squad that swung on the Assault Intercessors, I think killed 2? Killed 1?
Yeah, they killed 2.
Killed 2.
Yeah.
And then the other squad of Hellions killed 2 as well on the Initiates.
Yeah, the blue squad Initiates.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened.
And then came back to the Talos. He swung. I think he killed 1 or 2 guys, or maybe none. I honestly don't remember. Then my Rax swung. They did a little bit of split combat. 5 of them swung on the Emperor's Champion. They did a wound, and then 2 swung on the red squad, and I don't know what they did actually. I think they killed someone. And then my squad swung on his Captain in Terminator armor, and they did 1 whole damage.
Yep.
And then the Reavers swung, and they did. They technically did a wound, but he has the Helix Gauntlet, which nullified it, so they did nothing. And that was his red squad swung back and did 4 wounds to my Talos.
Yeah.
2 wounds to the Cronus. I think they killed a rack.
A neophyte killed 1 rack, yes.
Yeah, then a Captain in Terminator armor killed 3 of the
Racks.
other squad of racks.
Yes.
And that was the combat phase.
Yeah. As far as the rest of my squads at the bottom of the map, yellow and blue, didn't do any damage at all. Well, one is the yellow squad of assault intercessors killed one Hellion, but that's a drop in the bucket compared to what they killed. And yeah, and that was the entire fight phase.
Alright, you guys, so I only had one morale check. It was the squad of racks on his warlord. I needed a 5 or less to pass, and I rolled a 5. So they were just barely okay, but okay nonetheless.
And then my guys, my yellow assault intercessor squad needed a 4 or less, and they made it, just barely. Then my blue squad initiates rolled, they needed a 5 or less, they rolled a 6. I spent 1 CP to re-roll it and made the morale test. And so that is it for morale phase.
Alright, you guys, so for this turn I have 4 points on the primaries. Unfortunately, I got pushed off the 2. Otherwise, I would have had the full, but I have them back now. So I got 2 points for Death and Zeal because not only did I step back on the one that I got blown off of, I also took one from him, but that doesn't matter as much. I got 1 point for Fear and Terror because his red squad failed their morale check. I got the full 3 points for Engage in All Fronts because I have something in all, well, you know. And then Nephilim Data I got again because I have a squad of 10 doing it, so there's actually no chance for it to fail. And their objective secured, so they can do it in my turn instead of the battle round. So yeah, so not bad on points, but we still have his whole turn, and his turn will probably determine the rest of this game.
Alright, so all the chess moves are being made right now, and some very hard decisions. So my guys fighting at the bottom are just going to have to stay there. The Redemptor Dreadnought moves forward to be in a good 50-50 position to be able to... He's in a target-rich environment, so we'll see what happens with his shooting, where he's going to go next. The infiltrators that were fighting the Reavers fell back. They fell away, so the Reavers are now exposed. Now, the big choice I had to make was my green squad of Crusade Squad, the Initiates. So I could have him run to my home objective to secure it better in case of a more dangerous future, in case my bottom flank collapses. But then then I wouldn't be gaining any more ground, and I would kind of limit myself. So then I decided to have them run towards the center objective and get behind the oil slick, give them -1 to be shot at, +1 to their armor save for cover, just in case of anything really, to give them a fighting chance. And we'll see what that happens. They're now, well, they didn't actually even run to the center, so they're on it, they can still shoot. Then up top, so some big plays. The Land Raider Crusader moved back in order to give me some breathing room for my guys to move. And then, unfortunately, the Apothecary, because of where he was at, he had to move out of the way so that the Centurions could go through. So he could not be within range of the Emperor's Champion to heal him, but he is just within range of the Captain. And then the Assault Centurions moved their 5 inches. However, the stupid wall cut them their movement in half, so they ended up being in this segmented movement where 2 of them are out on one side, 1 is on the other side, but he can still see over, just like the very tip of him can see that vehicle, but one of the Assault Centurions is completely behind cover and can't see jack. So unfortunately, the Sergeant, the one I spent all the points on, is stuck in the back, not doing anything. Yeah. Oh, also, and Gormaldus did his... his litanies. So he gave the Giant Red Squad 5-up, Feel No Pain again, with Litany of Divine Protection. Then, this time, instead of giving them Litany of Hate, giving them rerolls to hit, I instead gave them Psalm of Remorseless Persecution, which basically, their 6s turn into additional 6s to wound turn into an additional mortal wound per unit. So I have 5 guys swing on a unit, they can do up to 6 mortal wounds on it, and a bunch of other guys swing on another unit, they can do up to 6. I figure this is more likely and viable to be useful than their reroll to hit. We'll see. Alright, so this was a mixed bag of shooting. So let's start off with the Redemptor Dreadnought. He targeted the flying guys that were down at the bottom, and he basically mag dumped them, and all of his shots failed until it came to the
Onslaught Gatling Cannon, and all of a sudden he just wiped them out. Frag Storms failed, Heavy Onslaught failed, and then he came to that and just deleted them. Then my green squad of initiates fired at his Cabalites on the top right next to the Ravager, and successfully killed 2. And at the bottom, my blue squad initiates fired at the Hellions and did nothing. They have bolt pistols. The assault intercessors fired at the Hellions they were fighting and did absolutely nothing. And then, then it got interesting. So then the red squad all fired their pistols. So 5 of them fired their pistols into the Talos, did nothing. Then the rest of the initiates fired into the Kronos and did 1 wound. Then the Neophyte fired into the Akothists and killed, or the Racks, and killed 1. Emperor's Champion fired into the Racks, did absolutely nothing. Grimaldus tried to fire, but he didn't actually have a target that was within range of his 12-inch plasma pistol. Then the Captain could not shoot. And then here's what happened. So the Land Raider Crusader backed up to shoot, so he fired his Hunter Killer missile at the Ravager on the right side. It missed. It hit, and then it didn't wound, and I spent a command point to re-roll it. It wounded, and then he rolled it on a 5-up save. Okay. And I declared already beforehand, so he fired his Multi-Melta and Stormbolter into the Reavers, and they all missed. The Stormbolter didn't do a single wound, and the Multi-Melta just flat out missed and didn't hit any of them, so they're still alive. However, the Land Raider Crusader did have his Hurricane Bolters and Assault Cannon fire at the guys on the top. However, because they were within 12 range, I got 24 shots, and I completely wiped out the squad of Witches before I even had the Assault Cannon, so the Assault Cannon didn't even fire. I mean, who could predict it? And then the real backbone of my army, the Assault Centurions. So basically what happened so one of them can't see anything to shoot. So 3 of them fired their Hurricane Bolters at the Cabalite Warriors that were off on the right, on the top, because they had range and line of sight, and they deleted the unit entirely. Then their Multi-Meltas targeted the Ravager vehicle that was right above them. So 6 Multi-Meltas. If you're wondering, the Assault Sergeant on the bottom right, the front of his thing could see the hull, so going around the corner. 6 Multi-Meltas just straight up deleted it. 4 wounds went through, he couldn't save them on his 5-up invulnerable save, and it was like 15, so it didn't explode. But that was essentially it for my shooting phase. So like the top part, I am slowly carving him away, but on the bottom, I am losing it. Alright, so first off, in the center, the Redemptor Dreadnought charged the Raider, made it. Then up top, the Assault Centurions charged the 1 Succubus that's up there, and they made it. And then Grimaldus, who I also charged with, charged the Racks that were right in front of him. Made it on a 6. Forgot to show that on camera. Alright, so for the fight phase, this Assault Centurions went first, and Brother Sergeant Chadius from the Assault Centurion Sergeant swung. So he needed 2s to hit, and he had a total of 6 attacks total because of his Champion of the Feast. And he really, really screwed it up. Only 1 attack went through in the end, so he got a lot of hits and stuff, but my opponent saved them all. Only 3 did wounds, and he saved them all except 1, so he took it. She went down to 2 wounds left. Then the rest of the Assault Centurion swung, did a bunch of wounds, and she saved all of them but 1. She did do a reroll, and she did make it, but I did more wounds. She used the reroll from the Sergeant's attacks, so only 1 of his went through. So they just barely killed her. She rolled so many 5s and 4s. Then moving on to my other charges, Grimaldus swung and killed like 1 or 2 dudes. No, like 2 dudes, yeah. Then my Redemptor Dreadnought swung on the Raider. Now with the Raider, I basically had 5 attacks on the charge, and I missed a lot. It was horrible, and I rolled to wound. 1 of them failed, so I spent my reroll to get an extra wound. He had 3 wounds, and then he rolled 2 5-up invulnerable saves, and 1 wound went through. And then I rolled a 5 damage total, so he's half dead because he rolled 2 5-ups. He keeps rolling 5s. And then my Emperor's Champion went next because he has always fight first, and so we're counting that in with the charges. And so the Emperor's Champion swung and killed like 2 dudes. He's really doing bad. All of his special abilities and powers really come out against characters because he rerolls hit and wounds. But against regular dudes, he can't do jack, it seems, even with all those ridiculous powers he has. And then it went to my opponent's turn. My opponent then swung with his Kronos onto my guys, did absolutely nothing. Then my red squad of swordmen swung back, and because they have the 6s to wound, do a mortal wound in addition. So what we thought happened was he killed the Talos, died, took 3 wounds, which finished it off, but my opponent forgot that he had a 3-up armor save, so ended up bringing him back. And because rolled those saves with 1 wound left, and then my sword brother, who was in there with 2 lightning claws, swung with 5 attacks on it to try to finish it off, and he failed. Every single one of them didn't wound. He saved all of them. Only 2 of them went through to wound, and he saved all of them, including the mortal wound, because it was stupid 5-up feel no pain. He keeps rolling 5s and 6s. His whole army has a 6-up invulnerable save. Then I had 6 guys swing on the Kronos. They didn't do anything to it. They didn't roll a single 6 for mortal wounds. They only did 2 wounds to it, which he saved. Then my neophyte with a combat knife swung and managed to kill a Rack. So this guy's definitely being a full-fledged Black Templar after this battle if he lives. Then my opponent swung down south with his Hellions and killed one of my the second guy of my blue Sword Brother squad. So there's only the main Sword Brother left. My Assault Intercessor swung to his Hellions and killed 1. Up top, my captain, he swung with his racks on my captain. They didn't do anything to him. My captain swung back, wiped out the squad, consolidating the last surviving rack he has there. And yeah, and then his Heliarchs swung on my yellow Assault Intercessor squads at the bottom, killed 1 of them. And then his Raider swung on my Redemptor Dreadnought, almost wounded it, but no. Well, actually, no, he didn't even hit it. And that was the entirety of the fight phase. Alright, when it comes to points, Death and Zeal, I took the middle objective, which secures that, and I killed, my captain killed a unit of racks on the objective up top, so that fulfilled both requirements, so I get an extra 3 points. I controlled 1 objective at the beginning, my home. Shock Tactics, I did not get it because... Oh wait, no, I did, because he had a vehicle in the center, and I took it from him, so I do get that as well. Grind them down. I killed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units of his this turn. 3 of them... Oh shoot, yeah, the Centurions are doing work. And Bathe Your Blade has not been met yet. And so far, it's slowly grinding in my favor.
Alright, you guys, so for movement, my Homunculus moved next to my Talos. He's just gonna slowly scoot away. The Ravagers swooped down. My Incubi and my Archon got out. Okay, so this is what we're digging around, because I've regularly hated transports because all they do is get stuck in combat, and then whatever they're carrying gets stuck. They can't get out. So I thought. And I was like, Dark Eldar, how do they have this entire army that relies on transports but then can't get out if they get stuck in combat, especially since they're open top? So I did some digging, and actually apparently the consensus is there's no actual rule that says they can't disembark while the transport is in combat, as long as they can get out and not be in engagement range. So if the transport was surrounded, they wouldn't be able to get out, but since it's not surrounded, the Raider in the middle, they were able to get out and not be in engagement range. And so that is something that I didn't know, because I've definitely played that way. If you recall my Adeptus Custodes game, when I took the Land Raider, my Alaris Terminators got stuck in there for the entire game because the Land Raider just wouldn't die and they couldn't get out. So that is what we have discovered. Let us know what you guys think about that. But yeah, so my Incubi and my Archon got out. My Cabalite Warriors are working their way up. And my Reavers moved into this terrain piece on the top piece, so that way they can't be charged, at least this turn or next turn. And they are going to try and do Nachman data. Now there's only 2 of them, so when I roll for it, I'm going to have to roll a 1 or a 2. But they're the only ones that can really do it right now, so I figured they might as well go for it. Who knows? And that was the movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for the shooting phase, the Ravager shot at his Assault Centurions. They did a total of 2 damage. So not great. And then my Kronos and Talos shot into combat on the Red Squad. I think they killed a guy, or did at least a wound. I'm not 100% sure. 1 wound, okay. Then the Raider tried to shoot at the Redemptor in combat. He missed because he needed a 5. And then the Cabalite Warrior shot at his Green Squad, killing 1 guy. And that was the shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so for charge phase, my Homunculus charged his Red Squad. He got in without any issue. And then my Archon charged his little Green Squad in the middle. He also got in without issue. And then the Incubi charged the Dreadnought and the Initiates. And they got in without any issue. So yeah.
Alright, so for the fight phase, one thing I would like to note at the bottom left, the green infiltrators that were fighting the Reavers. So, missed it, but the Black Templar vow I chose does not allow me to fall back, so they should have never been able to have fallen back. We only picked it up way late when everyone has already made decisions, and he's already doing like Nephilim data and stuff, so we decided to just play it as is. It just missed that. So, moving on from that.
Yes. Actually, where did I start? I started with the Archon because I thought he was going to wipe the Green Squad, and I would have been able to pile into the Redemptor Dreadnought, but he actually only killed 1 guy.
Yeah.
So that was kind of weird. But anyway, so Archon swung, killed 1 of the Green Squad, or 2. No, he killed 1.
Killed 1.
And then he interrupted.
When a Galaxy Brain moved, I decided that the Red Squad, who would have been the first to go anyway after the charges, I decided that they were the right target. I don't know why I did that.
Well, I mean, you killed the Cronus and the Talos.
Yeah, so in the end, they wiped them out.
Heavily disappointed in both of them.
Yeah. The reason is because they did mortal wounds on 6s because they're litany from Grimaldus. But I should have interrupted with the Redemptor instead. So Galaxy Brain move right there. So.
Yeah, and then the Incubi swung at full force, and 4 of them swung on the Redemptor, and they killed it.
Did 10 wounds.
10 damage.
Even after the damage reduction.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I rolled a lot of 6s, which increased both the AP and the damage by 1, which is crazy, but it's actually really cool. And then the other guy swung on the what was left of the Green Squad and just as similarly just erased them, that was nice after having such crap damage. Anyway, then after that, I don't know what you swung with next. I think it was your Assault Intercessors up at the bottom, or down at the bottom. Killed a Hellion, did a wound, and then my Hellions up there swung, killed that last guy that was there, and then he swung on my Rack, killing him, and then I swung with my Homunculus, killing 1 guy, I believe, and then swung with my Hellions, killing the 2 Assault Intercessors as well, freeing up the bottom almost entirely except for his infiltrators. And that was the combat phase. Alright, you guys, so for the battle run, I had 2 points on primary because I started off holding 2. Death and Zeal, so I not only took an objective from him, but I killed a unit on that objective, so I got the full 3 for that, it was in the middle. Fear and Terror, he didn't fail any morale tests because he didn't have any. He didn't fall back. Oh, he did fall back, but technically not. Oh, I guess that's a point. Yeah. Okay, so he did fall back, so I got 1 point there. And then the secondary part of this is whenever I wipe a unit out in melee, I roll 2d6, and if I equal or exceed that leadership, I actually get a victory point. And so for his Assault Intercessors and the other squad that was at the bottom of the map, I actually got an additional 2 points for them. Then I got 3 points for engaged all fronts, and then I rolled a 1 on my Nephilim data, so my 2 Reavers were actually able to pull Nephilim data for that corner, which is really cool. And so bringing me to, I'm still ahead on points, but I am running out of units, so I don't actually know how this is gonna go.
Alright, so for the movement phase, or actually command phase, Captain Grimaldus basically used his litanies on the red squad to give him a 5-up feel no pain. He failed, so I spent my only CP to reroll it, and he made it. Then I spent a CP to give him Litany of Hate to reroll all hits, and he failed it on a 1. He gets litanies on a 2-up, and he failed it. So once that happened,
getting tired.
Yeah, everyone began to move out. So some strategic chess moves. So the captain in Terminator armor ran. He got D3+3 to run because of Grimaldus, so he made it 9 inches. Was still in the oil slick. I trust in his toughness because of his relic. The Assault Centurions moved up their 5 inches to get closer to the center. Apothecary moved up to be able to heal the Assault Centurion, and at the end of the movement phase he did healed him for 2 wounds, so Brother Sergeant Chadius is back up to 5 wounds. Grimaldus moved south towards that deal with the middle. The Emperor's Champion is curving around the red squad to be able to get me that 15 victory points. And, and the Land Raider moved to the very bottom, and technically according to the rules, the bit of his hull can see across the map, so around the corner. Alright, so for the shooting phase, my Land Raider Crusader mag dumped everything into his Raider in the middle and successfully brought it down to 1 wound. Then my Infiltrators, I only had 2 guys who could shoot, fired at it, and successfully did a wound and killed it. Then my opponent spent a CP to reroll the save and made it, so it's still kicking. Then my Assault Centurions mag dumped the Incubi. They can only hit it with the Hurricane Bolters, so they hit it with 48 shots from that range. And they only killed 1 because he used a stratagem to give them +1 to their armor save, plus the light cover and stuff. They basically had a 1-up armor save, and even though Tactical Doctrine gave me AP -1 on my gun, he only rolled 1-1. And then my Captain Terminator armor, he did run, but his melted gun is also an assault weapon, so he fired at them and successfully killed 1 Incubi. And that was the end of my shooting phase. And so for charges, I basically just had the Emperor's Champion charge the Homunculus. We're going to see how this goes. Alright, and so for my fight phase, the Emperor's Champion swung on the Homunculus. Did 7 attacks, 2 missed, he got to reroll them, they hit, rolled 7 wounds, 1 failed, he rerolled it, made it. Unfortunately, I forgot to declare which kind of weapon he was swinging with, so he went with the broad strokes one. And so, 6 attacks went through his save, and he had to roll 12 damage, feel no pains, and he did not. He almost did, he rolled, he only failed 7 of them, but it was quite a lot. And so, the Homunculus went down, and Emperor's Champion brought me 15 victory points. Alright, so, for the points, I controlled 1, I controlled 2, but, in the end, Shock Tactics, I didn't gain anything because I didn't take any objective that he owned, grind them down. He killed 4 units, I ended up killing 4 units, so we're tied on there. Death in Zeal, I didn't kill any units that were within 6 inches of an objective, and I didn't take in any objective. So, nothing there. But Bathe Your Blade, I got the full 15 points. Emperor's Champion killed the Homunculus in melee. So that really pushed me ahead, but I really floundered on all my other secondaries. So, we'll see what happens.
Alright, you guys, so for movement, my Ravager moved up a little bit, so that way he can shoot directly at the Emperor's Champion. The Raider moved down to get away from the Land Raider, but also so he could probably shoot someone. And then my Cabalite Warriors moved into the middle, so they're able to take that. My Incubi and my Archon moved to fight Grimaldus and the Red guys, and my Hellions moved over to take that corner objective and kill those infiltrators. And then my Reavers ran for it a full 28 inches down to this corner. They won't be able to do Nachman data, but if they live, they might have a chance next turn. But it'll just get me engaged in all fronts, at least for now. And so that was my movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, it was quite depressing. But the Ravager shot all 9 shots at the Emperor's Champion. He only did 2 damage, so only 1 went through.
But Grimaldus gave him a 6-up feel no pain, and he saved that other 1, so he took 1 wound in total.
Oh yeah. And then the raider shot at him as well, but shooting through the oil slick and already being so damaged, he needed a 6 to hit, and he did not get that, so nothing happened there. The Cavalite warriors shot at the assault centurions, and they did nothing. The Hellions shot at the infiltrators. They did 1 wound.
Yes.
No, because the Hex Gauntlet.
Yeah, they did 1 wound, but the
nullified.
Helix Gauntlet for the turn nullified it. Turns the first wound that they take, the damage becomes 0. So,
And then the Archon shot his pistol at Grimaldus, and he saved it. And that was the shooting phase. All right, so for my charge phase, I charged my Hellions into the infiltrators. The first 2 rolled double 1, but they were so close it didn't actually matter. Then the other ones rolled a 6, and they didn't actually care. I had some debate as to whether to charge my Raider in because of the Grizzly trophies and the -2 leadership aura it would give. But the only person he could charge is the Emperor's Champion, and he probably would not survive with his 1 wound left to give the radius off. So I decided to leave that alone. But my Archon charged both his red squad and Grimaldus, and then the Incubi charged just the red squad. So that way they can pull their full fury into that. And that was it. Yeah. All right, you guys. So for this fight phase, I started with because he couldn't interrupt, so I wasn't really worried about where I started. I started with the Hellions. And because even though they're 2 separate squads, he couldn't interrupt, so I just put both of their attacks together, and they were able to wipe the squad. It was pretty close, though, on the saves, if I recall, but they were able to do that, and then they were able to consolidate, so some of them are in cover, hiding, and the others, well, they're just there. And then my Archon went next. I was hoping to kill off Grimaldus so he could consolidate in and then attack again on the red squad because I didn't think they were going to die. But not only did he not kill Grimaldus, the red squad actually got incinerated by the Incubi, which was a shock to everybody, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then I swung again anyway with him, and he killed another Cenobite. So he put the 2 wounds that went through each time on a Cenobite server, and I killed 2. So Grimaldus is still at full health, but he only has 1 little servant guy left. So there's that. And that was the fight phase. All right, you guys. So for this turn, I got the full 3 primaries. So I'm holding 2, and then I'm holding more. I got 3 points for Death and Zeal because I took his bottom left objective and killed the squad that was on it. So I got the full 3 points there. For Fear and Terror, no one failed a morale test, no one fell back, and no one failed an action. However, the 2 units that I did kill in melee, I was able to actually equal their leadership. So I got 2 points there. Engaged in all fronts, I have the full 3, so I have someone on each table quarter. And then I wasn't able to do Nephilim data. I'm hoping in this final turn or final battle round that I will be able to pull that off. But yeah, so still doing okay on points. But he still has 2 scoring turns left, and I only have 1. So, yeah.
All right, so chess moves being done here. So the Apothecary moved in to support Captain Grimaldus and the Emperor's Champion. Terminator Captain can only move 3 inches because of the terrain, and so he moved towards the center. After that, the Centurions moved 5 inches forward to get line of sight of the Incubi. The other back assault Centurion moved to be able to intercept the Reavers on the other side. But we'll see what happens there. And then the Land Raider moved forward to get on the objective, and we're going to see what happens. Alright, so for the shooting phase, first the Land Raider focusing on trying to gain points. So I got onto the objective and I just mag dumped those guys, and they folded like a paper accordion after the first round of shooting from the multi-melta. So the rest of the shooting was wasted. Then up top, my assault Centurions mag dumped the Incubi. They had 84 shots within range because they were in rapid fire, and so 3 of them got their full 24, 1 got 12. and my opponent used 2 stratagems, one to make it -1 to hit and one to increase their save +1. And there was just so many shots, 25 wounds in total, and they were just wiped out to the man. Before my multi-meltas, there would have been 6 multi-meltas. So then after that, my Captain Terminator armor fired his assault melta-gun into the ranged Ravager that had only 1 wound left and killed it. It didn't explode. And then Grimaldus point-blank shot the Archeon, and did nothing. And that was the shooting phase. Alright, so overview. As for charges, the Centurions, most important ones because they had the most chance of failing, charged the guys that were 5 inches from them. They failed. I spent 1 CP to re-roll it, and they rolled the exact same thing again, a 3. So they failed their charge. That was a waste of a CP. An Emperor's Champion charged the Archon and rolled a 10 to move 4 inches, -2 because he was in the oil slick. Then, just to try, the Captain Terminator armor charged the Cabalite Warriors. Because of the terrain, he had to make an 8. He did not roll that, but he has Imperium Sword, so he got to re-roll charges for free. He still did not make it, and that was the charge phase. Alright, so the Emperor's Champion swung. He used the strong attacks, and which -1 to hit, so he hit on 3s. Luckily, he can re-roll to hit and wound against characters, but he rolled really poorly and only did 5 wounds, which my opponent rolled 1 at a time because how his save works is that he has a 2-up invulnerable save. But the first time he fails it, he loses it.
Yeah, I can't re-roll the save.
Mm-hmm.
So once it's failed, it's failed.
Yeah, and he proceeded to roll only 2-ups. He then turned around and the Archeon killed my guy. I should have spent a CP to re-roll it when it was at his invulnerable save, but I already went for Feel No Pains by then because he had a 5-up Feel No Pain from Grimaldus, but it wasn't enough and he was killed to the wound. Earlier the round, the Apothecary healed him, but only for 1. If he would have healed him for 2 wounds, he would still be alive with 1 wound. And then Grimaldus swung, did 4 wounds, but the Archon just laughed it off. And that was the fight phase. Alright, so for points-wise, I held 1, and then Death and Zeal. On the bottom left objective, I did kill the guys on top of it, and I took it, so I gained 3 points. Shock Tactics. I took an objective from my opponent, which was on the bottom left. Grind them down. He killed my big red squad, he killed my Emperor's Champion, and he killed the squad of Incursors that are on the bottom left. I killed his Raider, I killed a squad of Incubi, and I killed one of those Hellion squads at the bottom, so we're tied. And that is points. We have 1 last turn.
Okay, so for this one, it's really kind of about preventing him getting points in the next round. Because I have what I'm going to have, with the exception of maybe this Nephilim data, and of which it's a 1 out of 3 chance of me getting it. And so it's really just kind of maintenance at this point. So my Reavers moved all the way down into the corner, so that way they could pull this Nephilim data. My Hellions stayed behind the wall. There's no reason for them to take that objective from the Land Raider just to pop out and die and give him a whole bunch of points. My Ravager, even though I don't think anything could really reach him, moved back anyway because he has long reach and he can shoot. And my poor Cabalite Warriors in the middle, they're just kind of there. But I can use Hunt from the Shadows and Lightning Fast Reactions to make them -1 to hit and give them an additional 1 cover save. So that should help them enough to live. But we'll see. And that was the movement phase. Alright, you guys, so my Ravager shot at his Captain Terminator armor. He saved all of them except 1, I think. And then my Cabalite Warriors also shot at him. They actually were able to do 2. They have no AP, but he rolled up 2 1s, so. And then my Archon tried to shoot Grimaldus with his pistol, but he rolled a 1 to hit, so he's just really slacking. And that was it. Alright, you guys, so for my final turn, in the fight phase, the Archon killed a Cenobite server and did 3 damage to Grimaldus. And then he had a bunch of, I guess it was 4 that went through. He saved 2, and then he took 1 to the face. So his 2-up disappeared, and then he failed a 5-up. And so, yeah, so now he's just at his 5-up invul, and I guess he has a 3-up or 4-up armor. That's not great. Yeah, so we'll see if he lives through the next turn. But this is it for my turn. Alright, you guys, so I had the full primaries. Death and Zeal, I got nothing this time. Fear and Terror, I actually got nothing from this time because nothing failed a morale test or fell back or failed an action. I didn't kill anything to do the leadership thing. Engaged all fronts, I got another full 3 points. And Nephilim data, I just filled in the full tally of 8 because I failed the roll. I only was it was a 1 or 2, so I had a 33% chance of doing it. And I failed, so instead of 12 points, I have 8 points, putting me at a grand total of 83 points. Although I suppose if I kill, no. Yeah, no. So I don't think there's any chance for me to get any more points. If I do, I might be because I killed Grimaldus, and then I can do the leadership thing and maybe get 1 point that way. But looks like 83 is the number to beat.
All right, more chess playing. So the Centurions moved towards being able to have line of sight at the center. Then my Captain Terminator armor ran. He got full 6, so he was able to get into the center of the objective. Then my Land Raider Crusader moved. He's still on the point, and he has a bunch of targets to shoot at. Then my Apothecary moved over to be around Chaplain Grimaldus, and then healed him for full 3 wounds. And that was my movement phase. Okay, so that was a terrible shooting phase. So the Centurions up top fired at the Cabalites in the center, but he spent 2 CP to make it -1 to hit and +1 to their armor save, and basically they had a 2-up armor save, and so from 48 shots, only 1 of them died. Then the Land Raider Crusader mag dumped into them, and he killed a lot of them. The Stormbolter, the weakest weapon, did the most damage. The Assault Cannon killed 1. The Multi-Melta missed both shots. The Hurricane Bolters killed 1. Stormbolter killed 2, so he killed 4 in total. Then the Captain Terminator armor fired with his Melta assault weapon at them. He missed. I re-rolled it for a CP, and he missed on a 1 again. Rolled 2 1s. Then Grimaldus fired at the Archeon point blank with his plasma pistol and missed on a 1. So that was very disappointing. Alright, in the fight phase, Grimaldus and the Archeon swung. My turn, so I went first. Grimaldus swung, and he did 4 wounds to him, but he rolled 2 6s, and with the litany he did 2 mortal wounds in addition. My opponent saved 1, and so the Archon took a total of 4 wounds. 2 of them were mortal, and that finished it off. And with that, I killed it, and that was the end of the fight phase. Alright, so for points, I controlled hold 1, held 2. I did not take the middle, so I did not get the 3 points from Death and Zeal from killing off that squad and taking a spot. Shock Tactics, I didn't take the objective, so I didn't get 3 more points from there. Grind them down, I did get 3 more points because I did kill the Archon, and he didn't kill any of my units this turn. And so that leaves it to a massive total of 76 to 83, favoring the Drukari.
That's right.
And that is game. He cheated. Alright, so game's called, well, not called, it's finished. Drukari have won, and MVP, LVP. So, Black Templars first, LVP. Now, this game was interesting because everyone did really well. Like, it came down to you had more units and you outmaneuvered me and you just gained more points like that. That's essentially what happened. And you spent all those CP to not die at the end. So what it came down to is just not really guys who really failed, but guys who just didn't perform as well. And so on the bottom of the map, the blue sword squad, a crusader squad, and the assault intercessors yellow squad on the bottom, they got into fight. They did die a lot and they killed, but they were eventually overwhelmed. But they survived many turns. They just didn't kill a lot. And in the grand scheme of the battlefield, these guys performed the worst, but they weren't exactly failing horribly. So, a true LVP, I mean, it's really hard to say. It'd be the Sword Brothers, and I'm just going to give them on technicality simply because they killed less of those Hellions than the Assault Intercessors, despite being a smaller squad, but, I mean, it's hard to say who really failed. Then, MVP. We have quite the candidates. So, of course, Brother Sergeant Chadius, him and his squad killed the Grotesques, killed that vehicle, killed Succubus, killed a lot of Racks. They killed the entire Incubus squad. They killed one of those Kabbalites at the very end. These guys slaughtered a lot. They actually were the monolith of the game. They just, everywhere they went, death followed. And I had the Neophyte, who outperformed all his brethren and kept causing wounds on everything. So that was pretty good. Then I have the Emperor's Champion, who did die against the Archon. But before that, he did get me 15 victory points. I mean, single-handedly get me 15 points. What can you say to that? I mean, the rest of his performance was terrible, but 15 victory points. Then we have the Captain, who... So he ended up fighting weaker enemies, and he wasn't able to get into the thick of it, but he survived against tremendous firepower, as his relic gave him the ability to, and he just staunchly kept trucking on. But his performance overall wasn't as good. Like, he couldn't do as well. And you know what? Honestly, a good honorable mention also is the Land Raider Crusader. He slaughtered so much and helped so much. Slaughtered the entire witch squad. He slaughtered multiple squads, actually, with his firepower. This is at the very end. So MVP, honestly, Brother Sergeant Chadius and his squad, they just butchered everything. Everything they came across died. Their only failure was rolling poorly on that last charge. That was it. Apart from that, these guys just brutalized everything, and the game would have been very different if they were charged by the Talios and Helios. They would have obliterated them easily. They have like 15, maybe 20 attacks in total, especially with him. He has 6 attacks because +1 to attack permanently because of the vow, and his +1 attack for the Champion of the Feast. So he has 6 attacks. 3 others had 15. So I'm 21 attacks. Ridiculous. And he hits on 2s. So Brother Sergeant Chadius is Black Templar MVP. So what do you got?
Well, my Archon and Incubi were probably my MVPs here. Even though they, I guess they weren't technically really around for the first 2 or 3 turns, but once they showed up, they just started kind of clearing whole chunks of the table.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Archon did get stuck on Grimaldus, but it's only because Grimaldus had his stupid Cenobites.
Yeah.
Because that was enough damage to have killed him twice over.
Yeah, and he did kill the Emperor's Champion because of his stupid 2-up invulnerable save.
I know, it's ridiculous. But yeah, so but also the Incubi, like, they wasted the Redemptor Dreadnought, they killed the green guys in the middle, they wiped the red squad, like, they mass damage. I was really wondering where the damage was in the army, and it looks like it's the Incubi. Yeah, and then LVPs, I did not like the Cronus. It has some interesting abilities where it can heal units and or even bring I think it's Brax or a Drukari core unit back from the dead. So it doesn't even have to be a homunculus unit, but it has to kill something in combat. So I think if I was to take them again, I would have to take 2 or 3 of them, because they swung, but he literally never did any damage. And so that's LVP. But then also the Ravager, every game I've taken him so far, he really hasn't done very much, and this time I took disintegrator cannons, and it might just be because you're Space Marines and you had some like heavier troops, but
a 4-up invulnerable save and only 1 damage. You fired at the Terminator, the captain, and he just would not die.
Yeah, so, well, because I even shot it at the Assault Centurions, like, he never did more than 2 damage at a time, I think.
To be fair, when he fired at the Assault Centurions, I took it on the Sergeant, who had a relic that reduced the damage by 1, so you also have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, to some degree, but even still, like, the successful wounds was so few. I think the rest of the army actually did really well for itself, as a whole. Because they were very mobile, they were able to move around and kind of catch off, and I think that's honestly where most of my points came from.
Yeah.
engage on all fronts, even death and zeal, just being able to hold on to objectives and move around because of how many of them were objective secured.
Yeah.
It also made Nachman data a lot easier as well.
Yeah. One thing I probably noticed is that I probably threw too much of my power up north. Knowing the rules about disembarking, that would have changed how I played. This guy would have been front and center, and so he would have fought against the Helios, the Tealer, and stuff, and so it would have been a very different game. But probably the giant squad of Crusaders honestly just kind of gets in the way. It makes things worse. So smaller squads broken off could have spread out more. I did not know about the Incubi, how powerful they were. I would have done something differently then. Yeah, with the Redemptor Dreadnought swinging on them instead early and stuff like that, seeing them as a real threat. The Redemptor Dreadnought, if he kept surviving, would have blocked the entire bottom. He would have just slaughtered a squad every turn with his firepower and then some. So
yeah, well, Redemptors are mean, so I mean they kind of force attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the transport thing was definitely, like, if I had known that, I wouldn't have like gotten my witches out when they landed, because then they had I mean, to be fair, I put them in kind of not the best spot, so they weren't able to do any charges, and then they're super weak when they get shot at.
Yeah.
They withered.
I am a little upset that because my next army will not have any transports at all, so I won't be able to take advantage of these new rules and just spam a transport army. Yeah. So
you say new rules, but really just
new to us. We never realized that about the disembarking. But yeah, but overall, like, Black Templars is probably one of my favorite Space Marine armies, simply because of, like, it applies to the tropes. I had a Terminator captain be nearly invincible. I had a Land Raider. I punched forward, disgorged a bunch of heavy troops, and they slaughtered everything. I like these guys because they can actually run some pretty lore-accurate or lore-idealized stuff. My Land Raider punched forward, killed a ton, dropped a bunch of big guys. They killed a ton. My captain pushed forward, didn't die, killed a ton. Like, if he fought the Archon, he would inevitably win with how terrible you were rolling.
Yeah, I was rolling pretty bad.
Yeah.
The hard part is with Dark Eldar is they have poison weapons, sure, that wound on 4s, but then they have just such low strength. Like, it's really, I don't know. It's just hard to get those good damage rolls out of them. Because even the Archon with his weapon only gave him +1 strength, so he was swinging at strength 4. So it's not great. So I think knowing that, like, Incubi are probably one of the bigger power sources, and maybe Grotesques, I think the way I shape the army would be different going forward at this point. But I did like Dark Eldar. They are really mobile, and they're probably one of the cheapest armies I've ever played, with, the squads of 10 Cavalry Warriors being only 80 points. Like, that's crazy cheap.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting to play. But I think they definitely are, like, you kind of gotta pinpoint your focal areas and then just smush it.
Alrighty then, GG's. Don't fully know what I'm playing next week. I have yet to decide. I have a book specific, but it has multiple armies in it, so
we'll see what it is. So, yeah, GG.